Ladies and gentlemen, good day. It is a pleasure once again to speak into your life, because your life is precious, your purpose is valuable, and your destiny is too important to be wasted on things that do not matter. And today, I want to address something that is sabotaging multitudes of people, something that is silently stealing potential, destroying relationships, hindering progress, and disqualifying many from leadership before they ever begin. I want to talk to you about the danger of living reactively. You know, I have discovered that your life is never determined by what happens to you. Never. People may insult you. Situations may disappoint you. Circumstances may frustrate you. But none of these things have the power to control your destiny. What determines your life is not the event. It is your response to the event. Your future is not shaped by incidents. It is shaped by interpretation and reaction. Write this down. Life is 10% what you experience and 90% how you respond. Most people today are living in what I call emotional slavery. They are governed by impulses, imprisoned by feelings, controlled by comments, and hijacked by circumstances. They don't lead their emotions lead them. They don't respond with intention. They react with instinct. And whenever reaction becomes your default mode, you surrender control of your life to everything around you. Let me tell you something profound. The most powerful person in any environment is the one who is not easily provoked. Because if someone can provoke you, they can direct you. If someone can offend you, they can distract you. And if someone can distract you, they can derail you from your purpose. Many of you are not delayed because of demons. You are delayed because of distractions. You are not held back by enemies. You are held back by emotional reactions. And this is exactly why offense is such a deadly trap. Offense does not simply upset your feelings. Offense interrupts your assignment. The moment you shift your focus from where you are going to who upset you, you have already lost momentum. Purpose requires attention. Vision demands focus. Destiny cannot be reached when your emotions are running in 1,000 directions. I want you to hear this carefully. You were never designed to be managed by the environment. You were created to manage the environment. But how can you manage what is outside if you cannot manage what is inside? This is why the kingdom of God begins with self-government. Before God ever gave Adam dominion over creation, he expected him to have dominion over himself. Your greatest leadership responsibility is not leading people, it is leading your own spirit, your mind, your emotions, and your reactions. If you cannot rule your emotions, you are disqualified from ruling anything else. That's why reacting is dangerous. Reaction means someone else is in control. Reaction means the outside world dictates your inside world. Reaction means your peace is negotiable. Reaction means your destiny can be diverted by comments, criticism, conflict, or confusion. Hear me. A reactive life is a fragile life. A reactive spirit is an unprotected spirit. And that is why today we are going to learn something powerful. How to become unoffendable. How to protect your spirit from the provocations, manipulations, and emotional traps of the age in which we live. Because the truth is simple. This world will give you countless opportunities to react. But you were not created to live by reaction. You were created to live by purpose, discipline, and kingdom identity. Let me close this introduction with this statement. A person who is reactive is easy to control. A person who is unoffendable is impossible to manipulate. Your greatest freedom is not the ability to express your emotions. Your greatest freedom is the ability to govern them. You cannot walk in your assignment if you are controlled by your reactions. You cannot fulfill destiny if you are constantly emotionally disturbed. And you cannot lead others if you are mastered by offense. So today we begin a journey toward the untouchable spirit, the spirit that cannot be offended, the spirit that cannot be manipulated, the spirit that is anchored, rooted, grounded, and established in purpose. Because when you truly master your reactions, you don't just protect your peace, you protect your future. Now that we have established the danger of living reactively, I want to take you deeper to the root, to the foundation, to the very beginning of why this battle over your emotions is so critical. Because you cannot overcome something you do not understand. And you cannot master something you have not properly defined. So let's talk about the purpose of emotions. Ladies and gentlemen, hear me carefully. Your emotions are not evil. Your emotions are not your enemy. Your emotions were created by God. But listen, well, God never intended your emotions to govern your life. They are designed to serve you, not rule you. Assist you, not dominate you. Inform you, not direct you. Let me explain. Every function God created in your soul has a purpose. Your mind was created to think. Your will was created to choose. Your emotions were created to express. But when that order is disrupted, when emotion begins to take the place of will, or when feelings override truth, now the entire soul becomes disorganized. That's why the scripture says, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Unstable emotions create unstable decisions. Unstable decisions create unstable destiny. Write this down. Emotions are wonderful servants, but dangerous masters. God gave you emotions so you can connect with others, interpret your environment, empathize with people, and experience the beauty of life. Emotions are like colors that paint the canvas of human existence. They add depth, texture, warmth, and richness. Without emotions, you cannot love. Without emotions, you cannot appreciate beauty. Without emotions, you cannot experience compassion. And this is where most of the world fails. Emotions were never given the authority to dictate your choices. They were designed to give signals, not instructions. You see, emotions are like indicators on the dashboard of a car. They tell you something is happening, but they do not tell you what to do. You don't obey the indicator, you interpret it. If the fuel light comes on, you don't panic. If the temperature gauge rises, you don't scream. If the check engine light blinks, you don't abandon the car. No, you interpret the indicator and you make a wise decision. But many people treat their emotions as if the indicator is the engine, as if the warning light is the steering wheel. They react to feelings as if feelings are facts. And when feelings take the front seat, wisdom moves to the back seat, and destiny is thrown out of the vehicle. Hear me. Your emotions are real, but they are not always right. They are valid, but they are not always accurate. They are powerful, but they are not always truthful. Most people fail in life not because of their environment, but because of their inner responses. They fail not from lack of skill, but lack of self-management. They collapse not from lack of opportunity, but from lack of emotional discipline. Let me give you a principle. A person who does not govern their emotions cannot govern their future. You were created to exercise dominion. That is the first assignment God gave humanity. But dominion does not begin with land or animals or territory. Dominion begins with self-management. Before you rule anything on the outside, you must rule everything on the inside. If you cannot rule your anger, you cannot rule your life. If you cannot rule your impulses, you cannot rule your decisions. If you cannot rule your reactions, you cannot rule your destiny. So your emotions have a purpose, but not the purpose you may think. Their purpose is not direction, their purpose is detection. They reveal what you are feeling. They do not decide what you should do. Emotions are signals, not commands. Guides, not gods. Messengers, not masters. And until you understand this kingdom structure, spirit over soul, soul over body, truth over feelings, purpose over impulse, you will live your life constantly dragged by the unpredictable winds of circumstance. But when the spirit, the real you, the God-breathed identity sits on the throne of your life, then emotions fall into alignment. They become instruments, not interruptions. Allies, not adversaries. Let me summarize it this way. You cannot live a purposeful life while being controlled by emotional reactions. Purpose demands clarity. Destiny demands consistency. Leadership demands stability. And none of these can coexist with emotional instability. So today, remember this principle and write it deep upon your heart. Emotions were designed to accompany you, but never to lead you. Once you understand the purpose of emotions, you are ready for the next step. And that is understanding the true cost of offense. Now that we understand the purpose of emotions, I want to take you into something even deeper. Something that silently destroys purpose, paralyzes potential, and delays destiny. And most people never recognize it until it has already done its damage. I call it the cost of offense. Listen to me carefully. Offense is one of the most efficient, most subtle, and most destructive tools ever used to derail a human being from their assignment. Not because it is loud, not because it is dramatic, but because it is effective. Offense does not need to break your body, it only needs to break your focus. It does not need to defeat you, it only needs to distract you. And the moment you become distracted, you are no longer advancing toward your purpose. I want you to write this down. Offense is the enemy of progress. Every time you stop to react emotionally, you pause the movement of your destiny. When someone triggers you and you drop everything to defend your ego, you lose time. Time you will never get back. When you allow anger to hijack your decisions, you lose accuracy. When you dwell on what someone said, you lose clarity. Ladies and gentlemen, please hear me. Offense is a thief. It steals your energy. It steals your peace. It steals your creativity. It steals your focus. And eventually, it steals your future. Let me tell you something very important. Offense shrinks vision. When you become offended, your world becomes small. You no longer see the goal. You only see the insult. You no longer see the assignment. You only see the annoyance. You no longer see the possibilities. You only see the provocation. Great destinies require great vision. But offense tunnels your vision until the only thing you can see is your pain. Hear this. You cannot walk into a large future with a small perspective. An offense makes everything small. Not only that, but offense reveals something deeper, something internal, something you may not want to admit. Offense exposes unhealed places. People can only offend you in areas where you are still vulnerable. You are not reacting to what they said, you are reacting to what was already inside you. Offense is often the echo of an old wound. So when someone triggers anger in you, the anger was already there. When someone triggers insecurity, the insecurity was already there. When someone triggers fear, the fear was already there. Offense is not created by the moment, it is exposed by the moment. I want you to remember this. You cannot be offended without your agreement. Offense requires your participation. It cannot enter your life until you open the door. This is why it is so costly, because to be offended, you must willingly pause your purpose to engage in emotional warfare that yields no reward. Offense interrupts divine timing. Some of you have missed opportunities, promotions, relationships, breakthroughs, not because God denied them, but because offense delayed you long enough for someone else to step into them. You cannot walk in purpose if you keep stopping to chase emotional fires. This next point is very important. Offense does not only waste time, it wastes energy. The emotional energy used to argue, defend, retaliate, complain, and replay events in your mind, that energy should have been used to build, create, innovate, serve, and advance. Every minute spent offended is a minute stolen from your future. Let me put it another way. Your destiny is too expensive to spend on cheap emotions. And here is the final truth I want to give you in this section. The enemy does not need to destroy you. He only needs to distract you. If he can make you offended, he can make you reactive. If he can make you reactive, he can make you inconsistent. If he can make you inconsistent, he can make you ineffective. And if he can make you ineffective, he can remove you from your assignment without ever touching your life. That is why offense is so dangerous. It is not an emotional moment. It is a spiritual trap. A trap designed to keep you busy with the wrong battles while ignoring the right responsibilities. So hear me. Offense is not about the person who hurt you. It is about the purpose you are abandoning. That is the true cost. Not your feelings, not your pride, but your purpose. This is why you must learn how to protect your heart from offense and train your mind to stay anchored in your assignment. Because when you refuse to be offended, you remain unstoppable, unshakable, and undeterrable. You keep moving, you keep growing, you keep advancing toward destiny. And nothing, no words, no insult, no criticism can take you off course. Now that we understand the cost of offense, I want to take you even deeper to the very mechanism by which offense enters your life. Because offense does not simply appear. It does not magically materialize. It has a pathway, a structure, an entry point. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot fix what you cannot identify. So today, we are going to identify how people gain access to your emotions. I call this the anatomy of a trigger. Listen carefully. A trigger is not the event itself. It is your internal interpretation of the event. Two people can experience the same moment. One is calm, the other is explosive. What is the difference? Interpretation. This is why the scripture tells us, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Not as a man experiences, as a man thinks. Your triggers are rooted not in the world outside you, but in the world inside you. Let me define it clearly. A trigger is an unhealed, ungoverned, unexamined part of your soul that reacts before your mind can respond. It is a place where your emotions still hold authority. It is territory where your spirit has not yet taken dominion. And until you understand where your triggers come from, you will continue to blame the wrong people for the wrong battles happening in your life. So let's break this down very simply and very powerfully. There are three doors through which offense and emotional disturbance enter. Door has shown. Identity, insecurity. If you do not know who you are, anyone can tell you who you are not. And if you don't understand your value, anyone can make you feel worthless. This is why Myles Munroe always taught, the greatest discovery in life is self-discovery. Because until you discover yourself, you cannot protect yourself. Most emotional reactions are not reactions to the person, they are reactions to the fear that the person's words might be true. You're not offended because they insulted you. You're offended because you secretly believe it might apply to you. So the first door is simple. A weak identity creates a trigger-ready soul. If your identity is rooted in opinion, then opinion becomes your master. If your identity is rooted in affirmation, then criticism becomes your enemy. But if your identity is rooted in purpose, then nothing can steal your stability. Door, #2, emotional history. A trigger is rarely about the present moment. It is the echo of a past wound. Someone raises their voice and suddenly you're not in the conversation, you're back in childhood. Someone disrespects you and you're not hearing them, you're hearing every rejection you ever faced. Someone ignores you and you feel invisible, not because of the moment, but because of the memory. Hear me. A trigger is the past intruding on the present. It is the unresolved claiming authority over the now. It is history stealing the opportunity of today. This is why healing is essential. Not optional, essential. Because every unhealed wound becomes a trigger point. And every trigger point becomes a doorway for offense. Door #3, mental habits. Not every trigger is emotional, some are habitual. Your mind develops patterns. And whatever pattern you repeat becomes your automatic response. If you have spent years rehearsing negativity, offense becomes your default. If you have trained your mind to assume the worst, then every comment feels like an attack. If you live in survival mode, you interpret everything as danger. Write this down. Your life always moves in the direction of your most dominant thoughts. If your thoughts are untrained, your reactions will be undisciplined. If your thoughts are undisciplined, your emotions will be unpredictable. And unpredictable emotions produce an unstable life. Now hear me, because this is the most important truth in this section. People can only trigger what you haven't mastered. That means the real battle is not with them, it is with yourself. If someone calls you worthless but you know your worth, you don't react. If someone tries to provoke anger but you have mastered anger, you stay calm. If someone questions your identity but your identity is secure, you remain unshaken. You cannot be triggered in areas where you are healed. You cannot be offended in areas where you are whole. You cannot be manipulated in areas where you are disciplined. This is why the enemy fights your self-control more than anything else. Because if he can access your emotions, he can influence your direction. He cannot choose your destiny, but he can disrupt your focus. And if he disrupts your focus long enough, you will miss your divine appointment. Ladies and gentlemen, hear this final statement. A trigger is proof of territory you have not yet ruled. It is not a shameful thing, it is a revelatory thing. It shows you where your next level of growth must occur. And that is why the next part is so vital, because now that you see how offense enters, you must learn how to build the kingdom mindset that keeps offense out. Now that we have exposed the anatomy of a trigger, I want to take you into something far greater, far deeper, and far more powerful. Because understanding your triggers is only the beginning. Avoiding offense is only the first step. The real transformation comes when you embrace a mindset, a way of thinking that makes you unoffendable from the inside out. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where the kingdom becomes essential. You cannot master your emotions with worldly thinking. You cannot control your reactions with secular psychology alone. You cannot regulate your internal world if you are depending on external methods. No. To become unoffendable, you must adopt a kingdom mindset, a way of thinking rooted in eternal truth, not temporary motion, a perspective grounded in identity, not insecurity, a mentality built on purpose, not impulse. This is why Jesus spoke so much about the kingdom, not religion, not rituals, not feelings, the kingdom. Because the kingdom is a government, and governments operate by laws, principles, and order. Write this down. Where there is no order, emotions rule. Where the kingdom rules, emotions submit. Let me take you step by step into this transformation. 1. Identity. Before emotion, the foundation of the kingdom mindset is identity. This was one of the pillars of my life's teachings, because without knowing who you are, you cannot know what to tolerate, what to ignore, or what to rise above. Hear me. Emotional instability is always a sign of identity instability. If you don't know who you are, anyone can make you react. But when you know your identity, people lose their power over your emotions. When you understand, I am a child of God. I am filled with purpose. I am chosen. I am assigned. I am needed by my generation. Then suddenly, the opinions of others become background noise. Your identity becomes your foundation, and your emotions fall in line. Because identity gives you posture. Identity gives you stability. Identity gives you dignity. Identity gives you composure. And composure is the hallmark of emotional mastery. 2. Vision over reaction. Next, the kingdom mindset prioritizes vision. A person with vision does not react to everything. They don't have the time. Their energy is already reserved for something greater. Write this down. Vision decides which battles are worth fighting. Some of you are fighting battles that have no profit. You are reacting to things that do not matter. You are allowing petty moments to interrupt powerful missions. A visionary does not respond to noise. A visionary responds to purpose. When you know where you're going, you become selective about what deserves your emotional investment. Not everything qualifies. Not everything earns a reaction. Not everything deserves your attention. Your emotions follow your vision, not the other way around. 3. Purpose over pressure. The kingdom mindset also prioritizes purpose. Purpose is stronger than emotion. Purpose is greater than offense. Purpose is bigger than irritation. When you live by purpose, you realize that every moment of reaction is a moment stolen from your assignment. Every emotional outburst is time subtracted from your destiny. Purpose gives you what I call emotional immunity. The ability to absorb provocation without losing direction. Purpose turns pressure into discipline. Purpose turns insults into irrelevance. Purpose turns offense into opportunity. Hear me. A purposeful person is hard to offend because they are too focused on becoming who they were born to be. 4. Authority over atmosphere. The kingdom mindset restores authority over your internal climate. The average person lets the environment dictate their mood. If the room is tense, they are tense. If someone is rude, they become reactive. If things go wrong, they collapse emotionally. But in the kingdom, you don't enter an atmosphere, you set the atmosphere. You don't absorb people's spirit, you carry your own. You don't reflect their mood, you establish yours. You are not a thermometer, you are a thermostat. You don't measure conditions, you change them. Write this down. You have the authority to determine the emotional temperature of your life. And when you embrace this authority, suddenly people cannot push your buttons anymore. Not because they stop trying, but because the buttons no longer respond. 5. The spirit over the soul. Finally, the kingdom mindset puts your spirit back on the throne. Most people live in reverse order. Feelings first, decisions second, spirit last. That is chaos. That is disorder. That is instability. But the kingdom reorders your internal hierarchy. Spirit, mind, emotions, body. Where the spirit governs the mind directs the emotions, and the body follows the emotions, all in perfect alignment. When your spirit is in charge, your emotions cannot overthrow your thoughts. Your reactions cannot bypass your reason. Your feelings cannot sabotage your destiny. Your emotional world finally comes under divine management. Let me summarize this section with one powerful truth. The safest place to store your emotions is under the authority of your purpose. Because when your mind is kingdom aligned, your emotions lose the power to derail your destiny. You become stable. You become calm. You become anchored. You become unoffendable. You develop what I call the untouchable spirit. A spirit that is sensitive enough to feel, mature enough to understand, and strong enough to remain steady. And now that your mindset is established, the next step is learning how to interrupt the emotional hijack in real time. Now that you are beginning to understand the kingdom mindset, I want to give you something extremely practical, something simple but powerful, something you can use the very moment your emotions begin to rise. Because no matter how mature you become, no matter how focused you are, no matter how deeply rooted your identity is, you will always face moments that try to provoke you. You cannot control what life presents to you, but you can control how you respond. So today, I want to introduce you to what I call the pause principle. Ladies and gentlemen, hear me well. Between every stimulus and every response, there is a sacred moment of choice. Most people ignore that moment, but great leaders, kingdom people, emotionally disciplined individuals, they seize it. This is the difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is automatic. Response is intentional. Reaction is emotional. Response is spiritual. Reaction is impulsive. Response is purposeful. And the key to shifting from reaction to response is the pause. Let me tell you something important. The pause is not weakness. The pause is wisdom. The pause is not hesitation. The pause is governance. The pause is not a delay. The pause is dominion. Because the pause gives your spirit time to take the throne before your emotions seize control. So let me give you the simple structure. It is only 3 steps, but these 3 steps can save your relationships, your reputation, your opportunities, and your destiny. I call it the 3-second rule. 1, stop, freeze, the reaction. The first step in mastering your emotions is simply to stop. When something irritates you, stop. When someone insults you, stop. When your child disappoints you, stop. When your spouse says something sharp, stop. When a business deal goes wrong, stop. When life frustrates you, stop. Don't speak. Don't act. Don't respond. Just stop. Stopping does not mean surrender. Stopping means you are choosing to lead yourself. Because the moment you stop, you interrupt the emotional hijack. You break the cycle. You freeze the reaction before it solidifies into behavior. Write this down. If you cannot stop, you cannot leave. The strongest person in the room is not the one who reacts the fastest. It is the one who can pause long enough to remain in control. See, remember who you are and what you represent. Once you stop, the next step is to see clearly, to see properly, to see with kingdom vision. You can't see when you're reacting. You can't see when emotions are flooding your mind. You can't see when offense is clouding your judgment. The pause gives you time to see. In that moment, you ask yourself, who am I? What am I called to do? How does a person of purpose respond? What is my character in this situation? Does this reaction fit the future I am building? What will this look like tomorrow, next year, in eternity? This is why vision is critical. Vision reframes the moment. When you see yourself correctly, you interpret the moment correctly. When you see your purpose, the offense loses power. When you see your destiny, the insult becomes irrelevant. Hear this. The pause gives your spirit time to speak. And when the spirit speaks, emotions must submit. They cannot lead you where your purpose refuses to go. 3, choose the response aligned with purpose does. After you stop, after you see, then you select. Now selection is powerful because it means you are not a slave to emotion, you are a steward of emotion. You are not reacting, you are deciding. And decisions create destiny. In that moment, you choose peace over provocation, purpose over impulse, wisdom over reaction, silence over argument, understanding over assumption, composure over chaos, dominion over disruption. You choose. And when you choose intentionally, you reclaim authority over your life. Write this down. Power is not in the emotion. Power is in the restraint. The one who can control their emotions can control their outcomes. The one who governs their reactions governs their future. The one who pauses becomes unoffendable, not because triggers disappear, but because triggers lose their authority. Your emotional maturity is not measured by how you feel. It is measured by what you choose after you feel. Let me close this part with this truth. When you pause, you protect your purpose. The pause saves you from regret. The pause saves you from unnecessary battles. The pause saves you from damaging relationships. The pause saves your reputation. The pause saves your destiny. And when you master the pause, you become a leader of your life, not a follower of your emotions. Now that you know how to interrupt the emotional hijack, it's time to learn the practical daily steps to becoming an unoffendable person. Now that you understand how to interrupt the emotional hijack, I want to take you into something extremely important. The daily practices that transform emotional stability from a momentary victory into a lifestyle. Ladies and gentlemen, hear me well. Becoming unoffendable is not an event, it is a discipline. You do not reach this place by accident. You reach it by intention, by practice, by commitment. And if you can master these steps, you will rise above 99% of the emotional chaos that destroys relationships, careers, peace, and purpose. So let me guide you with the same clarity I use when training leaders. Here are the 7 practical steps to becoming unoffendable. Step 1, clarify your identity daily. Every morning, the world wakes up to tell you who you are. If you don't tell yourself first, you will believe the wrong voices. Write this down. Who you think you are determines what can offend you. If your identity is small, your offense will be large. If your identity is unstable, your emotions will be uncontrollable. If your identity is unrooted, you will be swayed by every opinion, comment, or criticism. So each morning, before you check your messages, before you face the day, affirm your kingdom identity. I know who I am. I know why I am here. I am not moved by opinions. I am led by purpose. I am stable, secure, anchored. Because when identity is clear, offense cannot stick. Step 2, choose your environment intentionally. Let me tell you something that will change your life. Your environment influences your emotions more than your intentions do. You cannot expect emotional peace if you constantly surround yourself with emotional turbulence. You cannot expect stability if you live among chaos. You cannot expect maturity if everyone around you lives in reaction. Your environment is shaping you whether you realize it or not. So examine your circle. Do they feed your peace or provoke your spirit? Do they encourage your growth or trigger your wounds? Do they challenge your purpose or distract your focus? You cannot carry a calm spirit in a conflicted community. Choose your environment intentionally because your environment becomes your emotional atmosphere. Step 3, train your mind through exposure. Your mind is always absorbing. It becomes whatever it is consistently exposed to. If you consume negativity, you become negative. If you consume offense, you become offended. If you consume fear, you become fearful. So change your exposure. Feed your mind principles. Expose your mind to truth. Fill your mind with purpose. Read, study, listen. Meditate, because the kingdom mindset is not built in crisis. It is built in quietness long before the crisis ever comes. A trained mind produces a stable emotional life. Step 4, remove emotional parasites. A parasite is something that drains you while pretending to be connected to you. Some relationships do not feed you, they bleed you. Some people do not lift you, they limit you. Some conversations do not build you, they burden you. Hear me. You cannot be unoffendable while keeping relationships that live on offense. Emotional parasites, gossipers, complainers, manipulators, emotional dependents, drama addicts, negative personalities, easily offended people. These individuals transfer their instability into your spirit. You must lovingly but firmly remove emotional parasites from your inner circle, because you cannot walk in emotional freedom while keeping company with emotional captivity. Step 5, practice silent strength. Silence is one of the most powerful tools of emotional mastery. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Silence is not passivity. Silence is strategic self-government. Hear this. When you speak in anger, you give away authority. When you stay silent, you keep your position. Silence confuses manipulators. Silence disarms critics. Silence protects your dignity. Silence gives time for wisdom to rise. Silence reminds you that your emotions are not the boss. Practicing silent strength builds emotional muscle. Step 6, master the art of interpretation. Offense does not come from events, it comes from interpretation. Two people can hear the same words and walk away with opposite emotions. Why? Because emotions follow meaning. So before reacting, ask yourself, what else could this mean? Is this worth absorbing? Is this moment bigger than my purpose? Is this interpretation rooted in truth or insecurity? Write this down. Emotional mastery is the mastery of meaning. When you control the meaning, you control the emotion. Step 7, protect your peace like property. Peace is not free, it is property. It is territory. It is ground you must defend. Most people protect their homes more than their hearts. They protect their phones more than their thoughts. They protect their schedules more than their spirit. But your peace is the most valuable possession you have. You must guard it, invest in it, preserve it, defend it. Because peace is the atmosphere where purpose thrives. Peace is the environment where ideas grow. Peace is the space where God speaks. And peace is the evidence that you are becoming unoffendable. Let me close this section with a clear truth. Emotional stability is not produced by one big decision. It is produced by 1,000 small disciplines repeated daily. When you practice these steps consistently, offense loses its grip. Triggers lose their authority. People lose their power over your emotions. Then you begin to rise not as a reactive individual, but as a grounded, principled, kingdom-minded leader. Now that we have laid the foundation of these practical steps, it is time to explore something even higher. The unoffendable life, the mark of a true leader. Now that you understand the discipline of becoming unoffendable, I want to lift you even higher, because emotional mastery is not merely about protecting your peace. It is about stepping into leadership. It is about fulfilling purpose. It is about representing the kingdom with excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, hear me well. The unoffendable life is the mark of a true leader. Leadership is not measured by charisma, talent, or public applause. Leadership is measured by self-management. Leadership is measured by composure under pressure. Leadership is measured by the ability to remain stable when others fall apart. Let me tell you something powerful. People do not follow emotions, they follow stability. A reactive person cannot lead, because no one can trust a spirit that fluctuates with the weather. A person who is easily offended cannot guide others, because offense turns leaders into followers of their own impulses. So the unoffendable life is not optional. It is essential. It is not a luxury. It is leadership. 1. Composure is leadership. Before people listen to your words, they study your temperament. Before they trust your vision, they observe your reactions. Before they follow your direction, they evaluate your emotional control. Write this down. A composed spirit communicates competence. Composure says, I am in charge of myself. Composure says, I cannot be pushed off my path. Composure says, I can be trusted with responsibility. Your stability is your credibility. 2. Emotional control builds influence. Everyone is drawn to the person who stays calm in chaos. Everyone respects the one who can stand still in the storm. Everyone values the one who does not crumble under pressure. This is why true influence always begins with emotional mastery, because emotional control produces confidence, predictability, safety, reliability, trustworthiness, and trust is the currency of leadership. Hear this. People follow those who remain steady when life becomes shaky. That is why becoming unoffendable expands your influence, because your presence becomes a place of peace, strength, and assurance. 3. Your calm becomes a weapon. Calmness is not weakness. Calmness is not passivity. Calmness is not resignation. Calmness is control. Calmness is clarity. Calmness is authority. Calmness is the loudest statement you can make in the presence of conflict. The world expects an explosion. You give them composure. The world expects retaliation. You give them restraint. The world expects anger. You give them alignment. This is why calmness is a weapon, because it disarms those who want to provoke you, confuses those who want to manipulate you, and elevates you above those who want to drag you into emotional chaos. Write this down. When you refuse to react, you take back the power. You choose the battlefield. You define the atmosphere. You set the tone. Your calmness becomes your strength. 4. The world needs leaders, not reactors. This generation does not lack information. This generation lacks emotional maturity. People are drowning in sensitivity, drowning in reactions, drowning in offense. Everyone is triggered. Everyone is defensive. Everyone is emotionally fragile. What the world needs is not more reactors, it needs leaders. Leaders who refuse to be governed by feelings. Leaders who refuse to be manipulated by emotions. Leaders who carry peace into conflict. Leaders who remain anchored when everything else is drifting. This is what Jesus meant when he said, "Blessed are the peacemakers," not peacekeepers, peacemakers. People who create peace through stability, discipline, and wisdom. This is what kingdom leadership looks like. 5. The unoffendable spirit is the highest form of inner strength. Some people think strength is shouting. Some think strength is dominating. Some think strength is reacting quickly. Some think strength is emotional intensity. But true strength is emotional constancy. True strength is internal self-government. True strength is the ability to feel without falling apart. True strength is the ability to remain in purpose while others drown in distraction. Write this down. There is no greater evidence of maturity than emotional sovereignty. When you cannot be offended, you cannot be manipulated. When you cannot be provoked, you cannot be controlled. When you cannot be emotionally hijacked, you cannot be derailed. You become unshakable. You become unmovable. You become untouchable. This is the mark of a leader. This is the mark of someone who walks in dominion. This is the mark of someone who understands the kingdom. Let me say it plainly. There is no greater power than a spirit that cannot be offended, because that spirit is free. Free from people. Free from fear. Free from insecurity. Free from reaction. Free from emotional bondage. It is free to leave. Free to think. Free to build. Free to dream. Free to pursue purpose. It is free to become everything God intended. And now that we understand the power of this unoffendable life, we will bring this entire teaching home by stepping into the final section. The call to rise into your untouchable destiny. Ladies and gentlemen, we have walked through a journey together, from understanding the danger of reactive living, to exposing the anatomy of triggers, to embracing the kingdom mindset, to practicing the pause, to mastering discipline, and finally, to rising into the unoffendable life, the life of a true leader. And now, as we close, I want to speak directly to your spirit, because everything you have heard, every principle, every truth, every revelation, was not meant to entertain you. It was meant to transform you. It was not meant to inspire you temporarily. It was meant to redefine your identity permanently. This final moment is not a conclusion. It is a commissioning. It is a calling. It is a divine invitation to step into a version of yourself that the world has never seen. So hear me with your heart. You were not designed to be ruled by emotions. You were not created to be controlled by offense. You were not born to react. You were born to lead. Offense is beneath you. Emotional chaos is beneath you. Instability is beneath you. Petty battles are beneath you. You are a child of the kingdom. You carry divine purpose. You are an ambassador of heaven. You are a steward of destiny. You are a vessel of wisdom. You are a leader designed to influence, not imitate. To govern, not react. To assign meaning, not absorb confusion. Write this on your heart. The world cannot pull you down unless your spirit steps down to its level. You were never meant to live in the emotional basement of humanity. You were meant to stand in the upper room of clarity, vision, and discipline. Your birthright is dominion not over people, but over yourself. So today, I call you to rise. Rise above offense. Rise above insecurity. Rise above emotional reactivity. Rise above the voices that try to steal your peace. Rise above the triggers that once owned your attention. Rise into the stability that marks great leaders. Rise into the composure that marks kingdom ambassadors. Rise into the unoffendable life that sets you apart. Hear this prophetic truth. Your future requires a stronger version of you than the one offense has been shaping. But the version of you that is coming is focused, disciplined, anchored, unmovable. The version of you that is emerging cannot be manipulated by emotions, cannot be derailed by criticism, cannot be controlled by people. The version of you that is rising is calm under pressure, wise under provocation, steady under stress, and clear under conflict. The version of you that God designed is untouchable. Not because challenges disappear, but because your spirit has taken dominion over them. Not because people stop provoking you, but because provocation no longer has access to your emotions. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger. So today, declare with conviction, I am done living reactively. I will not be governed by feelings. I take dominion over my emotions. I protect my peace as my divine territory. I refuse to be offended easily. I choose growth over reaction. I choose purpose over provocation. I choose discipline over impulse. I choose the kingdom mindset. I am unoffendable. I am untouchable. I am who God says I am. And I will live from that identity every day. This is your calling. This is your challenge. This is your rise. Go forward now. Into your life, your work, your relationships, your purpose. As a person who is not shaken, not pushed, not dominated by emotion, but governed by wisdom, guided by vision, anchored in identity, and strengthened by the Spirit. Go forward with the dignity of a leader. Go forward with the courage of a visionary. Go forward with the stability of a kingdom citizen. Go forward with the confidence of one who has mastered themselves. And may your life become the evidence that the greatest power on earth is not the ability to control others, but the ability to control yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, become untouchable. The world is waiting for that version of you.